Some people see the world as it is and they're satisfied. But then, there are those rare individuals who dare to dream of what the world could be. These dreamers are few and far between, individuals who defy convention, who rebel against the ordinary, and who transform not just their industries, but entire eras. What if I told you about one such man? A restless soul who wasn't born a genius but born different. A man whose name became synonymous with innovation, design, and revolution. He was none other than Stephen Paul Jobs, commonly known as Steve Jobs. Jobs' journey was far from perfect. It was raw, real, and relentless. It was marked by staggering successes and humbling failures, moments of brilliance and bouts of conflict, love, and heartbreaking loss. But through it all, one thing remained constant: his refusal to settle for anything less than extraordinary. His story isn't just about machines, it's about a vision. A perfectionist and a storyteller, who didn't just build products, but created experiences. From the birth of the personal computer to the iPhone that sits in billions of pockets today, Steve Jobs redefined how we connect, work, and create. In this video, we explore the life of Steve Jobs, who transformed dreams into reality, one bold idea at a time. Steve Jobs' story begins on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, California. Born to Joanne Carol Schiebel and Abdul Fattah John Jandali, his origins were as complex and fascinating as the life he would go on to lead. Abdul Fattah Jandali, his father, came from a wealthy Syrian family, the youngest of 9 siblings. Raised in a traditional Muslim household, he pursued higher education with passion, earning an undergraduate degree at the American University of Beirut before moving to the United States for his PhD in political science at the University of Wisconsin. There he met Joanne Schiebel, a young American woman of Swiss-German descent. Schiebel came from a Catholic family that owned a mink farm and real estate in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Although deeply in love, their relationship was strained by opposition from Schiebel's father, who disapproved of Jandali due to his Muslim heritage. When Schiebel became pregnant, societal pressures and family dynamics forced her to make a difficult decision. She arranged for a closed adoption and traveled to San Francisco to give birth. She requested that her son should be adopted by college-educated parents. Initially, a lawyer and his wife were chosen, but they withdrew upon learning the baby was a boy. This twist of fate brought Steve Jobs into the lives of a couple named Paul Reinhold Jobs and Clara Hagopian Jobs. Paul Jobs, an American of German descent, grew up as the son of a dairy farmer in Washington County, Wisconsin. After dropping out of high school, he worked as a mechanic before joining the U.S. Coast Guard. Fate intervened when his ship docked in San Francisco. He bet that he could find a wife within 2 weeks. Just 10 days later, he was engaged to Clara Hagopian, an Armenian-American descent. The couple married in 1946, beginning a life that took them from Wisconsin to Indiana, where Paul worked as a machinist and car salesman. But Clara, yearning for the vibrant life of San Francisco, convinced Paul to move back. There, Paul worked as a repossession agent while Clara became a bookkeeper. Despite their industrious lives, they faced heartbreak. Clara experienced an ectopic pregnancy, leading them to the decision to adopt. However, their lack of college education posed a challenge. When Schiebel learned of their backgrounds, she initially refused to sign the adoption papers, even petitioning the court to place her son with a different family. It was only after Paul and Clara made a heartfelt promise to fund their son's college education that Schiebel relented, allowing the adoption to proceed. And so, in 1955, Steve found his first home with a couple who, though unconventional by Schiebel's standards, would nurture and support the boy who eventually grew up to change the world. Paul Jobs was a man of many trades, trying his hand at various jobs before ultimately returning to his work as a machinist, a role that suited his innate skill and craftsmanship. In 1957, Paul and Clara expanded their family, adopting a daughter, Patricia, 2 years after welcoming Steve into their lives. By 1959, the Jobs family had settled in the Monte Loma neighborhood of Mountain View, California, a modest yet vibrant community. It was here that Paul decided to share his love of mechanics with his young son. He built a workbench in their garage, creating a space for Steve to explore and learn the art of craftsmanship firsthand. Steve deeply admired his father's abilities. Paul wasn't just a handyman. He was a creator. If we needed a cabinet, he would build it, Steve once said. When he built our fence, he gave me a hammer so I could work with him. While Steve admitted he wasn't particularly interested in fixing cars, he cherished the time spent with his father, eagerly soaking in the lessons and the bond they shared. Steve grew up attending a Lutheran church with his parents. As a child, he found it difficult to adapt to the strict confines of a traditional classroom. His rebellious nature and mischievous antics frequently got him into trouble. At Monte Loma Elementary School in Mountain View, he earned a reputation for pulling pranks and faced multiple suspensions. However, his father, Paul, chose not to punish him. Remembering his tough upbringing, Paul believed that the issue wasn't Steve's behavior but a school system that failed to nurture and engage his exceptional intellect. Recognizing his potential, Steve skipped the 5th grade and moved on to the 6th grade at Crittenden Middle School. However, the transition proved challenging. He struggled to connect with his peers and often felt isolated and out of place. The environment at Crittenden was harsh, and he often faced bullying from his peers. By the middle of 7th grade, the situation had become unbearable. In a moment of frustration, he gave an ultimatum to his parents: either they would move him to a new school, or he would drop out entirely. In 1967, recognizing the need for a fresh start for Steve's education, they made a significant sacrifice. By pouring all their savings into purchasing a new home, they secured a 3-bedroom house on Chris Drive in Los Altos, California. This house became more than just a family home. In 2013, it was officially declared a historic site, recognized as the birthplace of Apple Computer. This move placed Steve in the better-regarded Cupertino School District, offering him new opportunities and a stronger academic environment. At the age of 13 in 1968, he cold-called Bill Hewlett of Hewlett-Packard, asking for parts for an electronics project. Impressed by Steve's initiative, Hewlett not only provided the parts but also offered him a summer job at Hewlett-Packard. The Jobs family's move to Los Altos placed Steve in proximity to Homestead High School, a school deeply connected to the burgeoning tech scene of Silicon Valley. Starting his first year in late 1968, Steve met Bill Fernandez, a fellow student who not only became a close friend but also introduced him to another young tech enthusiast, Steve Wozniak, a meeting that would lay the foundation for Apple. Later, Fernandez would go on to become Apple's very first employee. Jobs and Fernandez didn't come from engineering families, but their curiosity led them to join John McCollum's electronics class. During this time, he started growing his hair and embracing the counterculture movement that was sweeping through California. His rebellious attitude caused tensions with McCollum, and he soon lost interest in the class. In the early 1970s, he began to experience a shift in his interests and outlook on life. He started listening to a lot of music and reading more than just science and technology. He enjoyed works like those of Shakespeare and Plato, especially King Lear. During his final years at Homestead, Jobs developed two distinct passions: electronics and literature. These dual interests were evident in his relationships. On one side, he was close to Steve Wozniak, his tech-savvy friend and future business partner. On the other, he shared a budding romance with his girlfriend, Chris-Ann Brennan, an artistic junior whose creativity complemented his own evolving personality. His mother, Clara, opened up to Chris-Ann Brennan, sharing that she was too scared to fully love him during the first 6 months of his life, because she feared he might be taken away. Even after winning the adoption case, she admitted that Steve was such a challenging child by the age of 2 that she briefly felt adopting him was a mistake and even considered returning him. When Chris-Ann told Steve about Clara's comments, he wasn't surprised, he already knew. He later shared that, despite everything, Paul and Clara had deeply loved him and given him a stable, caring upbringing. Steve was deeply loyal to his parents, never calling them his adoptive parents, and firmly stating, "They were my parents, 1000%. In contrast, his feelings about his biological parents were distant and unemotional. He referred to them simply as my sperm and egg bank. His personality was one of a kind and hard to label. A classmate from Homestead once said he was kind of brain and kind of hippie. He was smart enough to hang out with the nerds but didn't have their typical quirks. While he shared some ideas with the hippies, he didn't fully fit into their lifestyle either. In a high school divided by strict social groups, Steve stood out as an independent thinker, often finding himself as an outsider in a culture that didn't always value individuality. By late 1971, during his senior year, Steve was already looking beyond high school. He enrolled in a freshman English class at Stanford University while also collaborating with Brennan on an underground film project at Homestead. That same year, inspired by an article in Esquire called Secrets of the Little Blue Box, Wozniak created a low-cost device known as the Blue Box. This device used tones to hack the phone network, allowing people to make free long-distance calls. When Jobs recognized the potential of the Blue Box, he suggested selling them and sharing the profits with Wozniak. Together, they turned their small project into a surprisingly successful venture. In a 1994 interview, Jobs shared that it took 6 months to design the Blue Box, but the experience was life-changing. The success of the Blue Boxes showed Jobs and Wozniak that they could take on big companies and win. Jobs later said that without Wozniak's Blue Boxes, Apple might never have existed. This early achievement made him realize that electronics weren't just a fun hobby, they could be a path to innovation and success. By his senior year of high school, he began using LSD, an experience he would later describe as profoundly impactful. He once recalled taking it in a wheat field outside Sunnyvale, calling it the most wonderful feeling of my life up to that point. In mid-1972, after graduating from Homestead High, Jobs and his girlfriend, Chrisanne, took a step toward independence. They rented a house along with a roommate, Al, creating a space where they could begin shaping their own lives and ideas. In September 1972, Steve enrolled himself at Reed College in Portland, Oregon. Although it was an expensive private school, Jobs was determined to go there. His decision put a financial burden on his parents, but they were committed to support his dreams. At Reed College, he met Robert Friedland, the student union president, and they bonded over their shared interest in Eastern spirituality. Friedland managed an apple farm owned by his wealthy uncle, Marcel Muller, and often invited him to spend weekends there, helping with farm work. After one semester at Reed College, he made a bold decision to drop out. Without informing his parents, he left formal education, later explaining that he couldn't justify using their hard-earned money on something that didn't feel meaningful to him. Dropping out didn't stop him from learning. He stayed at Reed College and attended classes that truly interested him. One of these was a calligraphy course taught by Robert Palladino, which had a lasting impact on him. Years later, in his 2005 Stanford commencement speech, Steve shared that without that class, the Mac might never have featured multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. During this unusual time, he lived simply. He slept on the floor of friends' dorm room, collected Coke bottles to earn money for food, and relied on weekly free meals from the local Hare Krishna temple. In February 1974, after leaving college behind, he returned to his parents' home in Los Altos and began searching for work. His search quickly led him to Atari, Inc., a pioneering video game company in Los Gatos, California, where he was hired as a computer technician. He got the job in an unexpected way, thanks to a project created by his friend Wozniak. In 1973, Wozniak built his own version of the video game Pong and gave it to him. When Jobs showed it to Atari, they thought he had made it and offered him the position. Jobs quickly made an impression at Atari, both for his brilliance and his challenging personality. Co-founder Nolan Bushnell described him as difficult but valuable, noting that he was very often the smartest guy in the room, and he would let people know that. In mid-1974, Jobs traveled to India in search of spiritual enlightenment and a deeper purpose in life. He was joined by his friend from Reed College, Daniel Kotke, who would later become one of Apple's first employees. Their journey included a visit to Neem Karoli Baba's Kainchi ashram. However, when they arrived, the ashram was nearly empty because Neem Karoli Baba had passed away the year before, in September 1973. Undeterred, Jobs and Kotke continued their spiritual journey, trekking through a dry riverbed to visit the ashram of Haida Khan Babaji. After 7 months in India, he returned to the United States before his travel companion, Daniel Kotke. His appearance showed how much the journey had impacted him. He had a shaved head and wore traditional Indian clothing, reflecting his spiritual transformation. During this period, he continued to explore altered states of consciousness, experimenting with psychedelics. It was during this time that both he and his girlfriend, Chris-Ann, became dedicated practitioners of Zen Buddhism under the guidance of Zen master Kobun Chino Odagawa. Jobs often participated in extended meditation retreats at the Tassajara Zen Mountain Center, the oldest Soto Zen monastery in the United States. At one point, he thought about becoming a monk at Eiheiji, a famous monastery in Japan. While he chose a different path, he carried a lifelong love for Zen philosophy, Japanese food, and the art of creators like Hasui Kawase. Zen deeply shaped his focus on simplicity and minimalism, which became key features of his later designs and innovations. In early 1975, he returned to Atari, where co-founder Nolan Bushnell assigned him to design a circuit board for the arcade game Breakout using as few chips as possible. Knowing his friendship with Wozniak, Bushnell expected Wozniak's help. During the day, Wozniak, who worked at HP, sketched the circuit design, and at night, he joined Jobs at Atari to refine it. Jobs then implemented the design on a breadboard. Atari offered $100 for every chip eliminated from the design. Jobs proposed splitting the reward with Wozniak if he could minimize the chip count. In just 4 days, Wozniak reduced the chip count to an impressive 45, far below the usual 100. Although Atari later adjusted the design, Wozniak's work amazed everyone. According to Wozniak, Jobs reportedly told him that their payment was $750 instead of the actual $5,000, giving him only $375. Wozniak discovered the truth a decade later but said he would have willingly given the money to Jobs if he had told him that he was in need at that time. That same year, Jobs had an unexpected encounter with the law in Eugene, Oregon. According to a document from the United States Department of Defense, Jobs claimed he was questioned for being a minor in possession of alcohol, though he claimed he had none. During the investigation, police found an unpaid speeding ticket. He recounted that he paid the $50 fine. By March 1976, Wozniak had completed the basic design of the Apple I computer. When he shared it with Jobs, Jobs immediately saw its potential and suggested they sell it. Although Wozniak was initially hesitant, he eventually agreed. The following month, on April 1, 1976, Jobs and Wozniak co-founded Apple Computer Company, now known as Apple Inc., in partnership with Ronald Wayne, whose job was to provide administrative oversight and documentation for the new venture. The company was headquartered at Jobs' parents' house on Crist Drive in Los Altos, California. The operation started in Jobs' bedroom before eventually moving to the family garage, which would become an iconic symbol of Apple's humble beginnings. Ronald Wayne played a brief role in the company's early days, but he soon stepped away, leaving Jobs and Wozniak as the primary co-founders. The name Apple was derived after Jobs visited the All-One Farm commune in Oregon. Inspired by the apple orchard there, he shared the idea with Wozniak, and they both decided it was the perfect name for their new venture: simple, approachable, and memorable. Steve Jobs initially planned to sell the Apple I as bare circuit boards for $50 to hobbyists. To fund production, Wozniak sold his HP Scientific calculator, and Jobs sold his Volkswagen van. Their efforts paid off when a retailer, Paul Terrell, ordered 50 fully assembled Apple I computers for $500 each. By the end of that year, around 200 Apple I computers had been produced. Steve Jobs' early days at Apple were as unique as he was. Neighbors on Crist Drive recalled him as a quirky, barefoot hippie, sometimes meeting clients with his underwear hanging out. One neighbor, Larry Waterland, a Stanford PhD in chemical engineering, was skeptical of Jobs' vision. When Jobs showed him the Apple computer, a simple setup of a circuit board, a Dumont TV, a Panasonic cassette tape deck, and a keyboard, Waterland compared it to bulky mainframes and punch cards, dismissing it by saying, "You've got to be joking." Daniel Kotke, Jobs' friend, and an early Apple employee, shared memories of those early days. He often worked alone in the garage, with Wozniak dropping by once a week to deliver his latest code. Meanwhile, Jobs focused on securing funding and investors, spending hours on the phone from his kitchen. Apple's early success was made possible in part by the support of Mike Markula, a semi-retired Intel marketing manager and engineer. Seeing the potential in Jobs and Wozniak, he provided crucial funding to help grow their young company. Scott McNealy, co-founder of Sun Microsystems, said Jobs broke the glass age ceiling by building a successful company so young. Mike Markula's support went beyond funding. He connected Apple with investor Arthur Rock. After seeing Apple's busy booth at the Homebrew Computer Show, Rock invested $60,000 and joined Apple's board, securing the company's future. Not all of Mike Markula's decisions pleased Jobs. In 1977, Markula hired Mike Scott as Apple's first president and CEO. Jobs, known for his independent and strong-willed nature, wasn't happy with this addition to the team. Chrisanne Brennan reconnected with Jobs after returning from India, and their romance blossomed again. She observed a shift in Jobs' nature, shaped by the teachings of Kobun, a Zen master who became an important mentor to both of them. During this time, Jobs was fully immersed in the development of Apple. He proudly showcased a prototype of the Apple II computer to Brennan and his parents in their living room. While Wozniak handled the technical design of the Apple II, Jobs focused on its sleek and unique look. Rod Holt also contributed by designing an innovative power supply that made the computer stand out from competitors. During development, tensions flared between the two founders. Jobs argued for 2 expansion slots, while Wozniak insisted on 8, leading to a heated argument. Frustrated, Wozniak threatened that Jobs should go get himself another computer. Ultimately, they reached at one point, and the Apple II was built with 8 slots. In April 1977, Jobs and Wozniak introduced the Apple II at the West Coast Computer Fair. This microcomputer became one of the first to achieve mass-market success, establishing Apple as a major player in the tech world and paving the way for future innovations. At this time, Brennan also started working in Apple's shipping department. As Steve Jobs found success with Apple, his relationship with her became increasingly complicated. The success of the company had begun to intertwine with their personal lives. She began questioning their future together. That October, Rod Holt offered her a paid apprenticeship designing blueprints for the company. Both Holt and Jobs believed the position suited her artistic talents, but Brennan felt uncertain about accepting the opportunity. Amidst this uncertainty, Brennan learned she was pregnant with Jobs' child. When she told him, his reaction was cold and distant. As her pregnancy progressed, Jobs avoided discussing it but later told her, "I never wanted to ask you to get an abortion. I just didn't want to do that." Brennan ultimately decided to leave Apple, turning down the apprenticeship opportunity. On May 17, 1978, at the age of 23, Jobs became a father. Brennan gave birth to their daughter, at the All One farm, owned by her and Jobs' mutual friend, Robert Friedland. Though Jobs' involvement was distant, he attended the birth after being contacted by Friedland. Sitting together on a blanket in a field, Brennan suggested the name, Lisa, and Jobs, who grew very attached to the name, agreed. While preparing to launch a new computer at Apple, Jobs named it Lisa. Brennan later learned of this but was never consulted about using their daughter's name for the project. At the time, Jobs denied paternity and claimed the name stood for Local Integrated Software Architecture, though this seemed unconvincing. Years later, Jobs admitted to his biographer, Walter Isaacson, "Obviously, it was named for my daughter." Despite his earlier denial of paternity, a DNA test confirmed Steve Jobs as the father of Lisa Brennan. The court ordered him to pay $385 per month in child support and to reimburse the welfare payments Chrisanne Brennan had received. When Apple went public and Jobs became a millionaire, he increased the payments to $500 per month. By this time, he had already achieved financial success, with a net worth exceeding $1 million. Just 2 years later, at 25, his net worth skyrocketed to an estimated $250 million. This made Jobs one of the youngest people ever to appear on Forbes's list of the nation's richest individuals, and notably, one of the few who earned their fortune without inherited wealth. In 1981, Jobs took over the Macintosh project from Jeff Raskin, who originally conceived it. Both Raskin and Wozniak contributed to the development of the project at the initial stages. But with Wozniak on leave after a plane crash, Jobs found it easier to take control of it. In 1982, Jobs purchased a luxurious apartment spanning the top 2 floors of the San Remo, a prestigious Manhattan building. Though he never lived there, he spent years in renovating it with the help of renowned architect I.M. Pei. In January 1983, Brennan opened up about her relationship with Jobs in an interview for Time magazine's Person of the Year issue. However, rather than naming Jobs as the Person of the Year, the magazine named it as the Machine of the Year, a tribute to the personal computer. In the same issue, Jobs continued to question the paternity test results, which stated a 94.1% probability that he was Lisa's father. Dismissing the results, he claimed that 28% of the male population of the United States could be the father, further complicating his public image during this period. By 1983, Jobs' vision for Apple was expanding, and he sought leadership to match his ambition. In one of his most iconic moments, he convinced John Sculley, then CEO of Pepsi-Cola, to join Apple by posing the famous question, "Do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugared water, or do you want a chance to change the world?" On January 24, Jobs introduced the Macintosh to an ecstatic audience at Apple's annual shareholders meeting, held at the Flint Auditorium of De Anza College. The Macintosh received glowing media reviews and achieved strong initial sales. However, its limitations, such as low performance and a lack of software options, led to a sharp decline in sales by the second half of the year. In 1984, Steve Jobs purchased the historic Jackling House, a sprawling estate in Woodside, California. For a decade, he called it home, but eventually moved out and began leasing the property to tenants. By 2000, Jobs had ceased maintaining the house, and the once grand estate began to fall into disrepair, succumbing to the elements. In 2004, he sought and received permission from the town of Woodside to demolish the aging structure and replace it with a smaller, modern home that better suited his minimalist aesthetic. However, the decision sparked a lengthy legal battle over the preservation of the historic property. After several years in court, Jobs prevailed, and the Jackling House was finally demolished in 2011, just months before his passing. By the mid-1980s, tensions between Steve Jobs and Apple CEO John Sculley reached a breaking point as their visions for the company diverged. Sculley supported the open architecture Apple II, focusing on education, small businesses, and the home market, areas less vulnerable to competition from IBM. Jobs, on the other hand, pushed for the Macintosh, a closed architecture system he envisioned as a powerful business alternative to the IBM PC. The divide between the Apple II and Macintosh divisions was stark, operating almost like separate companies, with duplicated efforts and little cohesion. By early 1985, the Apple II generated 85% of Apple's total sales but was ignored at the annual meeting, leading many employees to leave, including Wozniak. He sold most of his stock and stated publicly that Apple had been going in the wrong direction for the last 5 years. Despite his frustrations with the company's priorities and Jobs' focus on the Macintosh, Wozniak left on good terms. He remained an honorary Apple employee and continued his lifelong friendship with Jobs. By early 1985, it became evident that the Macintosh had failed to surpass the dominance of IBM PCs, a setback that strengthened John Sculley's control over Apple. In May of that year, encouraged by board member Arthur Rock, Sculley proposed a reorganization plan that would strip Steve Jobs of his influence. Under the plan, Jobs would be reassigned to lead new product development, a move that would effectively marginalize him within the company he co-founded. In response, Jobs threatened to resign from Apple, but the board urged him to reconsider. Sculley, confident in his position, told him that he had enough board support to proceed with the reorganization. Just a few months later, on September 17, 1985, Jobs officially resigned from Apple, marking the end of an era. 5 senior Apple employees also left to join Jobs in his new venture, Next. After his departure, the Macintosh continued to face challenges. Despite the excitement surrounding its launch, the high price tag made it difficult to compete in the market. By 1985, Apple encountered further setbacks when Bill Gates's Microsoft demanded a license for the Macintosh operating system. Microsoft, which was developing its own graphical user interface called Windows for DOS, sought protection against potential lawsuits over similarities between Windows and the Mac interface. Under pressure, John Sculley granted Microsoft the license. This decision, while resolving immediate tensions, created long-term problems for Apple. Meanwhile, inexpensive IBM PC clones running Microsoft software and incorporating graphical user interfaces began to dominate the market. Although the Macintosh had been a pioneer, its steep cost left it at a disadvantage as competitors gained traction. By the late 1980s, Windows-based PCs were improving rapidly, steadily eating away at Apple's market share. Other graphical user interfaces, such as IBM's TopView and Digital Research's GEM, emerged, further normalizing the concept that once set the Macintosh apart. As the decade drew to a close, it became increasingly clear that Apple's isolated approach was unsustainable against the growing dominance of the IBM-compatible ecosystem. After Steve Jobs left Apple, he apologized to Chris-Ann Brennan for his past behavior towards her and their daughter, Lisa. He admitted he hadn't taken responsibility when he should have and expressed regret. Over time, he developed a strong bond with Lisa, even changing her name on her birth certificate to Lisa Brennan Jobs when she was 9. Jobs and Brennan worked together to co-parent Lisa. During the lifetime of Clara, Jobs chose not to search for his biological parents. He didn't want his adoptive parents to feel less important to him, as he fully considered them his parents. In 1986, when Clara was diagnosed with lung cancer, he spent most of his time with her and learned more about his adoption. During his interaction, he came to know the name of the doctor who had handled his adoption. The doctor refused to help him during his lifetime but left a letter for him to be opened after his death. The letter revealed to him that his mother was an unmarried graduate student from Wisconsin named Joanne Schiebel. Steve Jobs contacted his birth mother, Joanne Schiebel, after his adoptive mother, Clara, passed away in 1986, and only with his father Paul's permission. During their first meeting, Schiebel was emotional and apologized for giving him up. They developed a friendly relationship and spent time together, including Christmas celebrations, for the rest of his life. She told him that he had a sister, Mona, who didn't know she had a brother. Jobs later described Mona as an important part of his family and said he couldn't imagine a better sister than her. He learned about his family history after meeting his birth mother. 6 months after giving him up for adoption, Schiebel's father passed away, and she married Abdulfattah Jandali. They had a daughter, Mona. They divorced in 1962 after Jandali returned to Syria. A few years later, she married George Simpson, an ice skating teacher, and her daughter Mona took his last name, becoming Mona Simpson. After their divorce in 1970, Schiebel moved to Los Angeles and raised Mona on her own. When Mona discovered that their father was living in Sacramento, Jobs chose not to meet him. Hence she decided to meet Jandali alone. At Jobs' request, she did not reveal their connection to Jandali. While Mona explored their Syrian roots and met extended family, Jobs showed no interest in his Syrian heritage or meeting their father. After resigning from Apple, Jobs founded Next Inc. with $7 million. However, by the following year, Next was running out of funds, and he faced the daunting task of seeking venture capital despite having no product ready to show. Salvation came in the form of billionaire Ross Perot, who believed in Jobs' vision and invested heavily in the company, giving Next a much-needed lifeline. On October 12, 1988, Next unveiled its first computer in a grand event at San Francisco's Davies Symphony Hall. It marked Jobs' comeback, and Wozniak later noted that during his time at Next, Jobs was really getting his head together. In 1990, Next launched its advanced workstations, priced at $9,999. Like the Apple Lisa, it was technologically ahead of its time but struggled to gain traction due to its high price, making it inaccessible for many in its target education sector. Despite limited sales, the workstations were praised for innovations like an object-oriented software development system, the Mach kernel, a digital signal processor chip, and a built-in Ethernet port, targeting financial, scientific, and academic users. One of Next's most notable contributions to history came in 1990 when English computer scientist Tim Berners-Lee used a Next computer at CERN in Switzerland to invent the World Wide Web. In 1990, Jobs unveiled the NextCube, calling it the first interpersonal computer and envisioning it as the future of computing. Jobs' relentless pursuit of aesthetic and technical perfection was evident in the design of the NextCube, particularly its sleek magnesium case. However, This meticulous attention to detail put significant strain on Next's hardware division. By 1993, after selling only 50,000 units, the company shifted its focus entirely to software, releasing NextStep. This transition marked a turning point, and in 1994, Next reported its first yearly profit of $1.03 million. In 1996, Next introduced WebObjects, a powerful framework for building web applications. When Apple acquired Next in 1997, WebObjects became a key tool, powering the Apple Store, Mobile Me services, and the iTunes Store. Although Nextcube's hardware was short-lived, its software innovations helped drive Apple's comeback and shaped modern technology. In 1989, Steve Jobs met Laurene Powell while giving a lecture at Stanford Business School, where she was a student. He later said he couldn't take his eyes off her during the talk. After the lecture, he approached her in the parking lot and asked her to dinner. From that moment, they began a relationship that lasted for the rest of his life. He proposed to her on New Year's Day in 1990, and they married on March 18, 1991, in a Buddhist ceremony at the Ahwahnee Hotel in Yosemite National Park. The couple had 3 children together, a son, Reed, and 2 daughters, Erin and Eve. They resided in Palo Alto, California, and remained together until Jobs' passing in 2011. In 1986, Jobs made a bold investment that would change the face of entertainment. He provided $10 million to spin out the Graphics Group, the computer graphics division of Lucasfilm. Of this amount, $5 million was used as capital for the newly independent company, while the other $5 million secured the technology rights from Lucasfilm. This venture, later renamed Pixar, not only redefined animated filmmaking but also marked a significant chapter in Jobs' career. Pixar's debut film, Toy Story, marked a turning point in animation history. As the first feature produced through Pixar's partnership with Disney, it achieved both critical acclaim and box office success. Under the creative leadership of John Lasseter, Pixar went on to produce a string of iconic hits during Jobs' lifetime, including A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Cars, Ratatouille, WALL-E, Up, Toy Story 3, and Cars 2. Some of these films even found a way to win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, a category introduced in 2001. By 2003, Pixar's contract with Disney was ending, leading to tense negotiations between Steve Jobs and Disney CEO Michael Eisner. When talks failed, Jobs announced in January 2004 that he would never work with Disney again, leaving Pixar's future uncertain without its key distribution partner. In October 2005, Disney underwent a leadership change as Bob Iger succeeded Michael Eisner as CEO. One of Iger's first priorities was to repair the strained relationship with Jobs and Pixar. By January 24, 2006, Jobs and Iger announced an agreement. Disney would acquire Pixar in an all-stock transaction valued at $7.4 billion. The deal made Jobs the Walt Disney Company's largest individual shareholder, owning approximately 7% of the company's stock. As part of the merger, he joined Disney's board of directors, solidifying his influence within the entertainment giant. His influence at Pixar was equally impactful but in a more hands-off manner. Floyd Norman, a longtime animator at Pixar, described Jobs as a mature, mellow individual who never interfered with the filmmaker's creative processes. Pixar co-founder Edwin Catmull recalled a memorable piece of advice Jobs once gave him during a disagreement. Just explain it to them until they understand. Catmull later chronicled his experiences working with Jobs in his 2014 book, Creativity, Inc., highlighting the balance of innovation and leadership that defined Jobs' approach. By 1996, Apple was struggling to survive and needed a new operating system. After failed talks with B Inc., Apple turned to Steve Jobs, agreeing to buy his company, Next, for $400 million. Finalized in February 1997, the deal brought Next software to Apple and marked his return to the company he co-founded. In July 1997, after CEO Gil Amelio was ousted, Jobs became Apple's de facto leader and was named interim CEO by September. To turn the company around, he made bold decisions, cutting projects like Newton, CyberDog, and OpenDoc in March 1998 to focus on Apple's core products. One of Jobs' key strategic moves was ending the licensing program for Macintosh clones, making it too costly for manufacturers to continue. This decision was part of a broader effort to reclaim control of Apple's ecosystem. Under Jobs' leadership, Apple experienced a dramatic turnaround. The launch of the iMac and other innovative products not only boosted sales but also established Apple as a brand synonymous with sleek design and powerful marketing. These principles became cornerstones of the company's success. At the 2000 Macworld Expo, Jobs made his leadership official, dropping the interim modifier from his title to become Apple's permanent CEO. With his signature wit, he jokingly referred to himself as the iCEO. Under his leadership, Apple expanded its reach beyond computers, venturing into consumer electronics and digital media. The introduction of the iPod revolutionized portable music, paired with iTunes software and the iTunes Store, which transformed the way music was distributed and consumed worldwide. In 2001, he received stock options for 7.5 million Apple shares at $18.30 per share. Later, it was claimed the options were backdated, meaning they should have been priced higher at $21.10. This raised concerns about his unreported taxable income of $20 million and overstated earnings by Apple. The situation triggered criminal and civil investigations against him, who potentially faced criminal charges and civil penalties. However, after an independent internal investigation conducted by Apple, the company concluded that Jobs was unaware of any issues surrounding the backdating and found that the stock options granted to him had been returned without being exercised by 2003. Though the controversy cast a shadow over the company, Jobs was ultimately cleared of any wrongdoing, and the matter remained a complex chapter in his legacy as Apple's visionary leader. In October 2003, Jobs faced a life-changing moment when he was diagnosed with cancer. By mid-2004, he informed his employees that a tumor had been found in his pancreas. While pancreatic cancer often carries a grim prognosis, he revealed that his case was different. He had a rare and less aggressive form known as an islet cell neuroendocrine tumor. He chose to pursue alternative medicine instead of the medical interventions recommended by his doctors. He initially resisted surgery for his pancreatic cancer, a decision he later came to regret. For 9 months, Jobs explored alternative treatments, including a vegan diet, acupuncture, herbal remedies, juice fasts, and even consulting a psychic. Influenced by an unproven clinical approach, he delayed conventional medical intervention. Opinions on the impact of this decision vary. Cancer researcher and critic of alternative medicine, David Gorski, speculated that Jobs may have only modestly reduced his chances of survival. However, Barry R. Cassilith, a leading figure in integrative medicine at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, offered a more pointed perspective, stating, Jobs's faith in alternative medicine likely cost him his life. He had the only kind of pancreatic cancer that is treatable and curable. He essentially committed suicide. In July 2004, Jobs finally underwent a pancreaticoduodenectomy, commonly known as the Whipple procedure, which successfully removed the tumor. However, he opted not to pursue follow-up chemotherapy or radiation therapy. During his absence from Apple, the company was led by Tim Cook, then head of worldwide sales and operations. In 2005, Jobs faced criticism over Apple's recycling efforts for electronic waste in the United States. During Apple's annual meeting in Cupertino, Jobs reacted sharply to environmental advocates who challenged the company's programs. Shortly after, Apple introduced a new initiative, announcing that it would accept old iPods for free recycling at its retail stores. However, this move did not fully satisfy environmental activists. The Computer Take-Back campaign made its point loud and clear by flying a banner over Stanford University's graduation ceremony, where Jobs was delivering the commencement address. The banner read, "Steve, don't be a mini player, recycle all e-waste." In 2006, he took a significant step toward improving Apple's environmental impact by expanding the company's recycling programs. Under this initiative, any U.S. customer purchasing a new Mac could have their old system shipped and disposed of in an environmentally friendly manner, at no additional cost. In the same year, his cancer was returned, but this was kept private, known only to his wife, his doctors, and Disney CEO Bob Iger. In August 2006, Jobs took the stage to deliver the keynote at Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference. His unusually thin and gaunt appearance, combined with a more subdued delivery and his delegation of key segments to other presenters, sparked widespread speculation about his health. In response, an Apple spokesperson assured the public, stating, "Steve's health is robust." Throughout these innovations, Jobs maintained a strong focus on execution, reminding his team of the importance of delivering results with his famous mantra, "Real artists ship." This philosophy drove Apple to not only dream big but to consistently bring those dreams to life. Steve Jobs was known for his competitive spirit, and his rivalry with Dell CEO Michael Dell was no exception. It began in 1987 when Jobs criticized Dell's products as uninnovative beige boxes. The feud escalated in 1997, when Dell, speaking at a Gartner symposium, was asked what he would do if he were running Apple, which was struggling at the time. His blunt response, "I'd shut it down and give the money back to the shareholders." In 2006, when Apple's market capitalization surpassed Dell's, Jobs emailed employees, noting, "Team, it turned out that Michael Dell wasn't perfect at predicting the future. Based on today's stock market close, Apple is worth more than Dell. Stocks go up and down, and things may be different tomorrow, but I thought it was worth a moment of reflection today." Steve. Marking a triumphant moment for Apple. On June 29, 2007, Apple made a bold move into the phone market with the launch of the iPhone, a multi-touch display cell phone. Combining an iPod, a phone, and a mobile web browser, it redefined smartphones and transformed how we use technology. In 2008, concerns about his health reemerged after he appeared noticeably frail following his keynote address at Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference. Apple attributed it to a common bug and stated he was taking antibiotics, but some speculated it was a lingering effect of his earlier Whipple procedure. On August 28, 2008, a major blunder by Bloomberg added fuel to the rumors surrounding Jobs' health. The news outlet mistakenly published a 2,500-word obituary for him, complete with placeholders for his age and cause of death. Although quickly retracted, the mistake fueled rumors and intensified speculation about his health. Jobs addressed the situation with his characteristic wit during Apple's September 2008 "Let's Rock" keynote, saying, "The reports of my death are greatly exaggerated." Later, he ended another event with a slide showing 110/70ths, his blood pressure, and declared he wouldn't answer more questions about his health. On December 16, 2008, Apple announced that Phil Schiller, their marketing vice president, would give the final keynote at the 2009 Macworld conference. This unexpected move once again sparked speculation about Jobs' health, which was already a topic of concern. To draw the curtain over the rumors, on January 5, 2009, Jobs revealed that he had been dealing with a hormone imbalance for months, offering some clarity but leaving questions about his condition unanswered. On January 14, 2009, he informed Apple employees that his health issues were more serious than initially thought. He announced a 6-month leave of absence until the end of June to focus on recovery. During this time, Tim Cook stepped in as acting CEO, while Jobs remained involved in major strategic decisions for the company. In a testament to their bond, Tim Cook offered him a portion of his liver, as they shared a rare blood type. Jobs, however, firmly declined, exclaiming, "I'll never let you do that." In April 2009, Jobs underwent a liver transplant at the Methodist University Hospital Transplant Institute in Memphis, Tennessee. Following the procedure, his prognosis was described as excellent. On January 17, 2011, Apple announced that he was taking another medical leave, just 22 months after returning from a liver transplant. In a letter, Jobs explained he needed to focus on his health. Tim Cook took over daily operations, while Jobs stayed involved in major company decisions. Despite his leave, Jobs made key appearances during this time. On March 2, he took the stage to unveil the iPad 2. He returned again on June 6 to deliver the WWDC keynote, introducing iCloud, and just a day later, he presented plans for Apple's future headquarters to the Cupertino City Council. On August 24, 2011, he announced his resignation as Apple's CEO in a heartfelt letter to the board. He wrote, "I have always said if there ever came a day when I could no longer meet my duties and expectations as Apple's CEO, I would be the first to let you know. Unfortunately, that day has come. He transitioned to the role of chairman of the board, naming Tim Cook as his successor. Despite stepping down as CEO, Jobs remained deeply involved with Apple, working tirelessly on the company's vision and strategy until the last few days before his passing. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away at his home in Palo Alto, California. At around 3 p.m., he succumbed to complications from a relapse of his islet cell pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor, which led to respiratory arrest. The day before, Jobs had lost consciousness, and when he passed, he was surrounded by his wife, children, and sisters. His sister, Mona, recounted his final moments, describing his last words as, "Oh wow. Oh wow. Oh wow." Spoken hours before his death, Jobs looked at each of his loved ones, his sister Patty, his children, and his wife Lorene, before gazing past them with a sense of wonder. He then lost consciousness and passed away peacefully. On October 7, 2011, a small, private funeral was held for him, with details kept private to respect his family. As per his wishes, he was laid to rest in an unmarked grave at Alta Mesa Memorial Park in Palo Alto. Both Apple and Pixar issued heartfelt tributes, honoring the visionary who had shaped their legacies. Apple announced there would be no public memorial but invited well-wishers to share their memories through a special email address. Apple also paid tribute by dedicating its corporate website to Jobs. For 2 weeks, the homepage displayed a simple yet poignant grayscale portrait of Jobs alongside his name and lifespan. In a touching tribute, Apple, Disney, and Microsoft flew their flags at half-staff across their campuses and headquarters, symbolizing the profound impact Jobs had not only on his company but on the entire tech industry. His loss was felt deeply, and the world paused to reflect on the extraordinary life and legacy of a man who had changed it forever. His death prompted heartfelt statements from many. Prominent among them are his childhood friend and Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak, President Barack Obama, Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates, and former Pixar owner George Lucas. On October 16, 2011, California Governor Jerry Brown declared the day as Steve Jobs Day to honor his impact on technology and culture. Steve Jobs was famous for his reality distortion field, a remarkable ability to inspire and persuade others to believe in bold ideas and ambitious visions. Nowhere was this more evident than during his iconic keynote speeches, affectionately known as Steve Notes, at events like Macworld Expos and Apple Worldwide Developers Conferences. Jobs' storytelling and charisma made technology feel revolutionary and personal. He was as iconic for his style, his daily uniform, a black long-sleeved mock turtleneck by Issey Miyake, Levi's 501 blue jeans, and New Balance 991 sneakers, became as much a part of his identity as Apple's products were. Jobs understood the power of a signature look, one that conveyed consistency and became instantly recognizable, just like the brand he built. This minimalist approach mirrored the philosophy that defined both his style and his designs. Steve Jobs' life was a story of passion, vision, and relentless innovation. From revolutionizing personal computing to transforming industries like music, film, and telecommunications, his impact on the world is immeasurable. Jobs' legacy lives on in the innovative products he created, the companies he built, and the countless lives he inspired. He taught us to think differently, to push boundaries, and to never settle for less than excellence. Steve Jobs will forever be remembered as a pioneer who dared to dream big and change the world forever.